This week's particularly challenging question comes from a parishioner. And the question arose from his conversation with a friend about when did the church begin. And there are a number of statements that are made about the beginning of the church and specifically what event began the church, primarily because, well, for example, I'm thinking about a book by Cardinal Avery Dulles about the at least 9 senses of the meaning of the word church. So the question is, well, when we say church, what are we talking about? Are we talking about um, a collection of people? Are we talking about a building or a collection of buildings? Are we talking about, a legal structure? Are we talking about the deposit of faith? Are we talking about the sacraments? There's a lot of ways that we use the word church. Um, but understanding the intent of the question, my personal inclination would be to say that the church, as we generally refer to her, began on the day of Pentecost. Because we know that on the day of Pentecost, Christ has not only completed his earthly mission, he has died and been raised from the dead. He has instituted the seven sacraments and instructed his apostles on how to go into the world proclaiming the good news of salvation and to convey grace and to convey life transforming grace through the celebration of the sacraments. But it isn't until the day of Pentecost that the apostles really obtain everything that is necessary, not only to accomplish our salvation, but to have that missional sense and that missional initiative to actually go into the world and begin proclaiming the good news of salvation and manifesting the good news of salvation in people's lives through the sacramental life of the church. The parishioner brings up the point, well, the church didn't really start until some later point, and a lot of people point to the rule of Constantine, and when Constantine not only legalized Christianity in the world, but made it the official religion of the Roman Empire. And so it wasn't really until the time of Constantine that the church took on the public institutional sense that we often assume when we refer to the church. Prior to Constantine, and thinking back to the church of the Acts of the Apostles and the lives of the apostles after they went out on the day of Pentecost, they would not have thought of themselves, and no one would have thought of them as an institution in the world. In fact, really, Christians were not seen by the world as being distinct from the Jews for quite a while, because they would gather on holy days, they would go to the synagogue, they would hear scripture proclaimed, and after hearing scripture proclaimed in the synagogue, then they would go back to a private celebration of a meal, which included the celebration of Eucharist. And in fact, it wasn't until the latter part of the first century that they even had the word Christian to refer to the people who practiced that in their lives and taught others to practice that in their lives. So again, there's a lot of things that we could point to. We could point to Jesus' death on the cross and water and blood pouring from the side of Christ. Many people refer to that moment as the day that, or the moment in which the church was instituted. Many people point to, again, to the day of Pentecost as the day when the church was instituted. Many people refer to the rule of Constantine and not only the legalization, but the institutionalization of the church as the day or the time in which the church was founded. And none of these are definitively true. None of these are definitively wrong. Again, because of the many senses of the word church, you could reasonably make the argument that that was the moment, or that was the precipitating event that instituted the church. So at the end of the day, I think we can all agree that thanks be to God that uh, Jesus did, in fact, entrust us with everything that is necessary for our salvation, and has given us a active part in his mission of making that known throughout the world. And so go forth, remembering that God is who he says he is, you are who he says you are, and live the life that he created you to live.